Alright, so this is a video to basically just cover the multimedia Adobe Animate interface. Should be relatively quick because, I don't know, let's see why it would be long. Okay, so when you first open it up, it's going to give you basically these options. You can create new or you can open. Obviously, it only opens up FLA files, which are Flash. But it also has these little quick ways of creating them. So let's just go ahead and do full HD. Usually it gives me a sub thing here. There it goes. Okay, so we'll just do full HD. So it's basically going to be, I think it's 1920 by 1080. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so here's the interface. I'm just going to control minus. You have obviously already taken Photoshop, so some of this should be relatively familiar with you, because obviously it's an Adobe product. It wasn't originally obviously Adobe, but okay. So up the top you got your file, which is going to do what you typically expect, right? Open, save, close. Export. There's also publish. Publish is going to be important for later on because basically you can make your product, you can make your thing so that it exports out to like an HTML5 or goes to an app or all sorts of things. Okay, so the publish is basically, that's how you do the final delivery. Edit is what you would typically think of, right? Cut, paste, things like that. View. Again, if you want, you can see what it is. You probably know what those are. Insert, not really going to use that too much. Modify, we do use a little bit. Later on, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dealing with what we call symbols, and we'll talk about those more in depth later. But basically, the idea is that you can create a graphic, and then or bring that graphic in, and then you can make it into a symbol. And the symbol basically is like its own little area, like you see here, inside of another area. And so inside of it, you can have it do all sorts of things. But the idea is that it allows you to instance multiples of them. We'll get into it later, but it's kind of where a lot of the power comes from. Between that and the action script or JavaScript, depending on what you're working on, those are basically the two most powerful aspects of the program. So text obviously deals with font, commands, not really going to use that too much. Control. You can test your movie. You can have it basically it can do like a quick publish, if you will. So if it's meant to go on the web, it'll make a quick little web version. That's where the test movie comes into play. But you can also just hit play down here, but it's not the same thing because it's doing in it. This will actually export it out. Debug I don't really use, and then window obviously is all the things that you would typically expect to see over there. I would just tell you the same thing that I tell everybody. If for some reason you are a terrible human being and you like, oh no, I got rid of that, and your thing got all messed up, just in window, this works for all Adobe products. It's most softwares at this point. You can go to workspaces, just click reset essentials. Yes. And then boop, it'll put it back to regular. Okay, so if you lose something or whatever, you can also just do it manually and find it here, whatever's missing. You should be able to find them down there. But basically, this just handles all your panels that you currently see. Okay, and then help is help. It's not really too much to go on with there. Okay, on the left here is the tool panel. So basically, these are all the tools that we have available to us to work with. I'm going to cover. I'll swing back to that. That'll be the last thing we do. But obviously, these are all the tools, just like you would typically see. Then we have, but this is the stage. So they call it a stage in here. But basically, it's just like you would expect anything else, is that this is the edge. This is the stuff that will render. It's what's inside of here, okay? Which means you can, but what's different is that you actually can draw outside of the stage, but this part here is not going to show up, which is kind of nice because you can have something like come in and then back out, and it's basically being masked out by that frame. So that's pretty good, but this is called the stage. And if you're in like sub items, you will see right here it says scene 1, but you'll see like if you're inside of a symbol, it'll say the symbol's name, and then if you're inside of a symbol and that symbol, you'll see a path basically, or what we call breadcrumbs in web industry. But basically, you can see a way to get back. Okay. Another thing that's handy too, when you're trying to deal with the settings of the stage here, you can actually go here too, and you can zoom in and out using this. But when you are dealing with the settings in here, if you're like, oh, I didn't want 1080 by or 1920 by 1080, I didn't want 1080p. What we can do is if you have nothing selected, even if you have, I don't have any objects in here, but even if I had objects, just make sure nothing's selected. If you go to the properties panel over here, you can see all of your stage options. So you can change even the stage color so that that's the default color now, right? So if I'm trying to burn your eyes. Yeah, and then I can change the size here. I can change the frame rate, so you know, how fast it's playing, first-person shooters, and just the general settings. Okay, so that's how you get to that. All right, so that's the stage. Over here, basically, there's two main panels, but obviously this shares panels with these other ones. These will just pop out, but these are pretty much the two that we're going to be using almost exclusively. Let's pull you back. So we have the properties, which you can see it says tool, object, frame, whatever, right? So what that means is that as soon as you click a tool, you'll see the tool will pop up, and then the tool settings show up in here. All right, so whatever tool you have, you'll see the pop up there. However, if you have an object, let's say I draw an object, right? And then if I select that object, you'll now see that we're in the object of it, and now I can change the settings. And just like if you're in Illustrator or InDesign, I can interactively change the stroke and whatever I have selected in here, I can change here. Okay, so change the fill to something, whatever. And I can change the size and all that jazz. That can all be done right in here. So very similar to, again, like Illustrator or other programs. Okay, so that's the properties panel. So it'll handle basically your tool settings and the whatever object you have. Now these are just this is just an image, but if I had a symbol or something, it would also show up here. Even this, actually, even if I click on this frame right here, there we go. So now you see it says frame. It'll actually give me the frame settings as well, and that's actually going to be useful for later on. You'll kind of see why that we can use this to like do coding and things like that. We can label them. Okay, so yeah, that shows that. So basically, it's just a way of doing those couple of things there. And the last is the other panel is the library. And the library is basically, if you've ever used a nonlinear editor, and what I mean by that, like a movie maker software, right? So I forget what they call it, iMovie. I don't know what they call it for a Mac, but Premiere, or After Effects, or anything like that. You'll know that you bring in assets, and you have like basically just a box of footage and images and whatever, and then you can bring those into your scene. That's what this is. This is basically going to be our reservoir of assets that we can bring into our scene. And even when we make assets over here, so like just go ahead and just click on one of these and just click and draw. Okay, so just draw something. Then what I want you to do is go to the select tool, which is V, and just double click on it. If you click on it, you're only going to grab the inside, not the outside. Just double click on it so you get the stroke too, unless it doesn't have a stroke. And then I want you to just, if you hit F8, although it might be on a Mac, just go to modify, convert to symbol. I don't care what it is, just hit OK. I'm not that concerned about it. You'll notice that these will actually show up in the library as well. So when you make your symbols and stuff, you can actually grab them from in there. So this is super useful for, like, let's say you have a button graphic and you want to have multiple buttons. You can make one button, put all the code, everything into it, make it a symbol, and then you can use this multiple times, right? And if I go and I double click and open up the original, so now you see how it says scene, now it says symbol, so we're in a symbol in the scene. If I change anything about this, right, to whatever, and I'll back out by clicking on that, they all populate, it distributes to all of them because they are all sourced from the same symbol, okay? I can also, should be able to, yeah, I can also double click on it here. You see, it doesn't show me in the stage, but I'm inside of this symbol now. It's kind of similar, and if I changed it here, it would do the exact same thing. So even if it's not in the scene currently, you can still adjust it. I'm just going to hit this back arrow, and that'll bring me back out to the scene. Okay, so basically the library just holds all my business. Okay, so that's super useful. And then there's other panels too. The other thing we're probably going to use quite a bit is going to just be the where are you, actions? The actions thing, and that is for actions and snippets. And basically this is where we do our coding. And then you get the code snippets by clicking on this guy, and we can like basically copy and paste little bits of code. Okay, but this is the editor. This is the other thing we'll probably use. We will be using quite a bit. Okay, that's good. So then the bottom thing here is basically our timeline, and we're going to get more into it later on. But again, if you've used any sort of other, let me just give myself. So if I'm going to go to here, I'm just going to hit F5. That'll extend that picture across. It didn't add a key, it just made it last that long. But you can scrub, you can also, I think, right click and then just insert frame. It's the same thing. But you're going to notice that like basically F5, F6, F7, and F8 are like important hotkeys. So if you do have a Mac and you can turn off, or a PC, you can turn off whatever functions currently on them and let them just be what they are. It'll be easier. I will start off and I will do it manually up here, but after a while I'm just going to say screw it. I'm just going to start hitting hotkeys because I don't feel like doing that. Anyway, so yeah, this basically has the time slider, so you put your keys in here. So I'll hit like F6 for a keyframe, and then move it down, and then like, you know, move it up. F6 it, F6, move it back to wherever. Okay, so you can see, ooh, right? So it's just got the keyframes; they're not actually tweened. So I'm just gonna right click and we'll just do classic tween, and then you're gonna see, ooh, yeah, it's animating. Okay, but that's basically what it is. And so what you can do is you can have layers. So I'll just make a new layer, and then I have another layer. You should only have one object actually on each layer. This was naughty, but it keyed them all at the same time. But you see they all have to do the same motion basically. So yeah, then you would have multiple layers. Just the layers work just like you would expect, kind of like Photoshop. That's down there as well. They've added some other tools and things that are super useful, but that's the lump sum of basically lay interface. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all those things. I'm going to delete that layer, and I'm going to keep this one. I'm going to click and drag, right click, and remove frames. Okay. One thing you might notice too. See how this is a circle, but it's empty. It's not a black dot. It's like just a circle. As soon as you draw something in there, it will pop up. Okay. So let me just show you a couple of things, and then we can kind of go from there. All right. So I'm going to start off with the drawing part because that way we can make something and then manipulate it with the other things. Okay, so basically have a couple of different options here. We have these 3 brushes. Where's the other one? Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Okay. I want the other one too. I don't know why it's not on here. So do me a favor and click on these little this little edit toolbar button thing. This will show you all of the tools, so you can see some of them are hidden. What I want you to do is grab this one, this paintbrush tool, and just click and drag it and put it there. Okay, so you just click and drag, and if you want to take something off, you just click and you can drag it and put it back wherever this, I don't know where this guy goes. Oh, right there. But we'll leave him in there. But that's what that's for. It's kind of useful. Anyway, so we have these 4 options, and I'm just going to quickly kind of show what they are, and then I'll go from there. Okay, so this one is the liquid brush. So I'm going to click on properties so I can see the brush settings. It has a bunch of settings, and we can kind of get into this, where's my pen, later, but you can see you can have it change properties based on pressure and based on, so you can see like when I push harder, it will get lighter. It's got a weird kind of fluidity to it. It's nice. You can also do it, so let's say you don't have a pen, you can also do it by velocity. So you'll see when I go slow, or if I go fast, it goes thin. So that might be helpful to you. And the slider to adjust that is here. So right now, when I go fast, it gets thinner. If I go this way, it's going to do the opposite. So you can see when I go slow, it's going to be thin, but when I go fast, it gets thick. So that's what this velocity slider is for. But I can also just turn it off. You see how it grays out. So that does that. It has a taper setting, which is obviously just the end, how it tapers. The angle, so right now I've got it very round, but if it wasn't round, yeah, it doesn't matter. Let me make it bigger here. Come on, make you a lot bigger. I don't know if you can tell, but it's not, see how it's fat this way, but it goes thin that way. I can change the angle of it, so it's now, you know, angled this way is where it's thinner. Okay, so, you know, like a calligraphy thing. It's got curve smoothing, so it'll auto try to smooth it. It'll also try to auto stabilize it. So, like, it'll get rid of, like, if there's a little jolt or weird imperfection. It does all that. I like this brush. I think the result is pretty good, but the issue I have with it is this. Is that when you go to the selection tool, let's say I want to adjust it, like, oh, this I need to be more bent down. It makes a fill. So this is a shape. It's not a line. It's not a stroke. It's actually a fill. If you remember what that is, that's basically the idea is that when you draw a shape, we'll just do a circle this time. Let's do red. And, stupid thing. Get back on here. fill. Let's do red. Okay. That this image here, right? Stroke. It must be. Oh yeah, it's really thin. Okay. So this object here, when you're looking at it, what you're going to see is that it has the fill. That's the area that's filled inside, and it has a stroke, which is the line. Okay. So like if I have this is just a line, and it has points that you can manipulate, right? This one also has a line as well, that the stroke, but it also has this fill on the inside. Okay, but the fill is a fill, so it's a fill just like you would see inside of Illustrator and what have you. This actually is all fill. It's not a line. So I'm not a big fan of it for that reason, because it makes it harder to manipulate after you've drawn it. So that's why I don't typically choose that one. But it does have, out of all of them, it has the most settings to basically adjust. So that's kind of nice. Then let's skip the paintbrush tool and let's just go to the classic one. The classic one basically does the same thing as the fluid brush, but it just has fewer settings. So if you were going to go that route, so you can see, and you can see it looks a little bit more janky and stuff. If you were going to go that route of using a fill brush, is what I feel like they should call it. So you can see when I grab it, see how it's actually, you know what I should do is this. Let me show you this way. See how there's lines outside of it? Come on, just give me the, it's a fill. It's not a stroke. So if you're going to go that route, if you want to use that kind of brush, I would just use the fluid one, or the fluid one. But it's up to you. I'm just, you might like this one. This is kind of the old school one. This is like what it originally had. And then the other brush, which I don't know why they aren't using this one by default anymore. It's a little disappointing. Actually, I'll do this one last. And then the other one is the pen tool. So basically, these two will both create fills. These two both create strokes. So the pencil tool is one that you probably don't want to use, but when you draw a line, it draws a stroke, okay, which is cool. And again, this one is a stroke. So you see, like, I gotta grab just you. You can see it's just the line, okay? So that's cool. But what you will notice is, with the settings here, is that there's really no settings. You pretty much get this one look, and that's pretty much it. They do have these different styles, but like, you want to do dashed lines? I mean, stipple. There's not a lot of options as far as the look is concerned, so it makes it kind of junky. So I don't typically suggest using this one either. But at least it does draw. It does draw. Oh, I meant to be. It does draw at least a stroke. Now, this one I like the most. Doesn't have as many settings as the other ones, but what it does do is that when you draw your lines, for one, I have pressure sensitivity. It also does use tilt. I don't really care about tilt. And when I go to draw it, let me see. Let me make this a little bit thicker so it's a little more obvious. Oh, whoops. I'm not on the right one. I was like, why is it showing fill there? I meant this one. This guy here. This is the... Is that right? The icons mess me up. Yeah, that one. Sorry. Yeah, I'm like, it should just be stroke. Okay. So, when I go to draw it... Oh, it's not on. Hang on a second. There we go. When I go to draw it, you can see that basically it has it has a thin and thickness, which is nice. Okay. It doesn't have that little speed thing to it. So if you're just using a mouse, it's not quite as great. But it will use pressure sensitivity if you do. Now, let's say that you don't have a mouse, but you still want to have like weight of line. You can actually, here's a neat little trick you can do. So what I'm going to do is, come on, V, there we go. There it goes. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a line across like I did before. You're going to see it's going to be all the same thickness. But there's this other tool, which again is not here. Click on this, and you see this width tool. So click on that and drag it, and maybe put it like right underneath that brush, because that way we know we're using it with it. And then let's just put this back off. Okay, so this width tool. What I can do with this is you can click and you can drag. Come on, there he goes, and you can drag and fake basically thin and thickness. So I could kind of go like that, and then make the end here, make it really thin, like that. And so I can actually affect the stroke and the thickness of it. Now, obviously, you don't want to go through and have to do that like all the time, but it does give you a similar look than if you want to do something like that. So I typically am more of a fan of that one out of those, but that is a thing that's there. Okay, so that's sort of a rough coverage of the drawing tools. There's obviously a bit more than that, but I'm just going to call that good. So yeah, okay, so I'm just going to hit V again for the select tool. I'm going to double click on this and hit delete. Go ahead and play around with those two. Like, you should be playing around with it at the same time. I know I'm kind of going through it, but just pause it and play around with it and then replay the video. Try to do this as quick as possible. And then we have basically our shapes here. All right, so let me double check something. Does this have... Okay, I guess these do have it too. I didn't think these had it. Okay, so when you're doing these shapes, one thing you got to be wary about is this. You'll see that there's a rectangle tool and there's a rectangle primitive tool. Don't use this guy, because what it's going to do is it's going to draw this shape, but you can't do anything to it. You're going to see, like, I don't have, like, any control over it. It's just going to be that shape. There's also, when you go to draw these, so just always use a rectangle tool because it just has more flexibility. There's also this option here. Okay, so you can see it says object drawing mode, and that's the same thing. What it's going to do is it's going to draw it, and it's going to be, if I select it, you're going to see it's going to be almost like a symbol, but it's not. But you'll notice I can't do anything with it, as opposed to when I draw and this is not on. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my select tool. You can see now I can grab and I can manipulate it. So I can't do that with this one. So it's when you draw it like that, it's basically kind of like see, I can't even use the sub selection tool, as opposed to where I can do it here. So it's not as good. So if you notice you can't manipulate it, or it's being weird, or there's something strange about it, that's why. So, and you can actually do that in here too. That's what this is. So like I can have a line that I draw and it'll be object drawing mode. And so now you're going to see, oops, hit the wrong one. It's like an object. I can't do anything with it. So yeah, I don't suggest, just make sure that that's off when you're working, that you don't have this on. Okay. Right. So you can draw these shapes, which is pretty neato. There's also obviously this is the line draw tool. I use this a lot. You're going to see in the lab, that's pretty much what we use almost exclusively, is this line, and it just lets you draw a straight line. The reason why that's useful is that basically I can take it and then manipulate it pretty easily, and then when they intersect, you can, it makes points automatically. All right, and then there's the type tool, or text tool, which is kind of what you would expect. You click and make text. Not really anything too exciting about that. There is an eraser, and it will erase things, as you can see. Paint bucket does what you expect it would do. So let me change my color here, and we'll do whatever. It'll change that color. There's also ink bottle. So if you go underneath that, there's ink bottle. So that's already changed for color. You click on it, and what it's going to do is it changes. Oh, that's already that color. Let's do. It changes the stroke color, which is kind of a neat function. That can be kind of useful, because you could draw your entire character like just with black lines, and then like on its face just make it like a dark skin tone, and then do like, if it's got like a red shirt, do like a dark red line instead of it being black. It makes it look a little bit more sophisticated. And then eyedropper does what you expect it to do. It samples the color. We're not going to use the camera. The hand tool, you can obviously just hold space bar, and then to zoom, control plus and minus is more. Control plus. Oh, it's doing it based on the position of my cursor. That's why. You can also hold control and use the scrolly wheel inside of there, which it's all inside of Photoshop. I wish that was consistent, but it's not. Okay, and then I'm not gonna worry. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. So this camera not using, run using that. Okay, so this is just the stroke and fill color, which you probably figured out already. If you hover over it, it'll tell you. If you want to swap them out, you can actually just click this and it will flip-flop them. Because part of the problem is that when you do your sampling, it samples to the fill. So like, if I wanted to sample a different color, I'm not going to get, I'd have to afterwards flip it. So just be aware of that. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and do these top ones. So there is the the selection tool. So that's just our general selection. So you can grab. So you just click on a drawing or a symbol or object or whatever, and you can actually just grab and pull it. It's pretty easy, right? Now you can see I only grabbed the inside. If I double click, it'll grab what's connected to it. Same thing here. If I click on this and drag, it's only going to grab that one line. If I double click, it's going to grab all the like lines, right? I don't think I can get it to grab that. Yeah, so that's one thing. It also allows me, and this is where it's kind of neat, that you can kind of click and drag the points, right? And the curves on the inside. So that's pretty nice too. That I like quite a bit. Okay. Yeah, that's mostly what we need to know about that. There's also the sub-selection tool. So that is V for that tool and A for this one. I would get used to using these hotkeys. It's a lot quicker than trying to grab them over there. So basically this is uses like you would expect, right? The Bezier handles. Like again, if you've used Illustrator or InDesign, you may be semi-familiar with these. We use them a little bit in Photoshop too, but not too much. But basically it allows you to grab the points and to see them more specifically. Yeah, so yeah, that'll let you do that. So that's great. This is the way that we move objects. So as much as I can use this selection tool to move things. Oops, sorry. That's as much as I can use this to move things. See, I can't rotate or do anything other than I can't scale. To do that, you actually use the transform tool, free transform tool, and that basically lets you rotate. Lets me rotate, right? Based on this pivot, I can move this pivot to a different spot, and it's going to rotate. God bless it. There we go. And it's going to rotate, okay? And I can scale, right, in a weird way. If I hold Control, I can distort it. If you hold Control or Command, if you're on a PC, or on Mac, sorry, I can distort it, okay? And what else does it do? Oh, and shear. That's always fun. Okay, so that's what that does. Lasso does what you expect it to do, so let's just use regular lasso. But, you know, I can grab a chunk, pull it off, woo, right? And then the asset warp tool, it's not going to let me do it on here because these aren't objects. Do I have any? I think I deleted them, right? Yeah. But, you know. Okay. I want to cover one other thing just so that you kind of understand one principle here that's sort of important. And this kind of goes back to what I was showing you with the object drawing thing. Instead of making a separate video, I'm just going to do it all in this one. And that is basically, you know, I will do it in a separate video, but it'll be a quick one. All right, so there's an introduction to the interface. Yeah, there you go. All right, so good luck.